Okay, we good to go?
I'm just chilling at Canada Life Center.
That's the hard-hitting
why.
analysis you listen to the Level Flight podcast for.
Here we go. Jets are a brisket team, low and slow for the first two periods, and boom, an explosion of flavor in the last few minutes of the third.
Doing all right. Better if my internet would work.
Elliot.
This is comedy. I'm Brian. I'm joined by Connor.
Hello.
And Elliot.
Hey, hey.
Wow, that was fun.
You're listening to the Level Flight podcast.
Welcome into LFP Live. This is the 13th edition, joined by Brian today, a Mother's Day edition. Shout out to all the mothers in chat and making us a part of your Mother's Day here at 9 a.m. Brian, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. I can't really breathe today. I don't know if you've looked outside or anything. It's incredibly smoky.
Incredibly, yeah.
It's probably the earliest I've seen it this smoky out. Like, I feel like it's normally like a midsummer thing. But no, like it cooled off a little bit last night. So we'd opened the window and woke up this morning and it was just smoky beyond belief in the bedroom. So I'm doing better if I'd be actually able to breathe. So
Yeah. Well, I know the Bombers were supposed to practice this morning and they canceled, or they didn't cancel, they postponed till this afternoon because of the air quality. And yeah, I agree. What is it, May 12th? I didn't think that this was a thing this early in the season.
No,
but
I thought there was enough precipitation. Like, obviously there wasn't a lot, but there wasn't that much snow. There has been a little bit of rain, but I didn't think it'd be dry enough to have like the wildfires like this.
Yeah, agreed. Matt thinks it's maybe Sammy Smokes kicking up a brisket. Who knows? Shout out Jeff, shout out Doug, shout out to everyone in chat with us here at 9 a.m. We got a lot that we want to talk about today. We want to kind of glance over the Jets offseason as a whole, do an UFA, RFA preview. Brian and I both released articles with the Hockey Writers. Brian on Monahan, me on Perfetti. With that lens, shameless plugs. Yes, so go check that out if you haven't already. Talk about the coaching search. We did talk about that on the latest episode, but there have been some firings. There have been some new developments, let's say, in the rumor mill. So a lot to get to there. And then just doing an NHL playoff check-in, another great night of games last night in the NHL. And then obviously at the end, taking questions from you all. But Brian, it's Mother's Day. Any word on Mother's Day before we get going? I'll give you the floor.
Listen, I mean, you said it early, shout out to all the mothers, but I know my mom, every day wakes up on a Sunday nice and early so she can, tune into LFP Live. Doesn't necessarily chime in the chat, but will text me if she has things that she wants me to talk about. And, I always let her know, but obviously I appreciate her immensely and I love her so much. But Mother's Day, there's mothers watching with us today. Shout out to you.
Exactly. And I'll echo that, Mother's Day. My mother, she watches, she's not an often chatter, but she will, text me if my hair's too long and go tell me to get a haircut or if I'm wearing the wrong shirt or, keep me in check. And I appreciate that. And I'll echo what you said. Love my mother very much. Thank you everyone for tuning in today on Mother's Day. We really appreciate it because that is a tall ask, and maybe the smoke is helping people stay inside and watch us. But, yeah, shout out to all the mothers and especially my mother. But yeah, let's get into it here. Rod the Bod staying in Carolina for one more game. Yeah, that'd be crazy if they fired him. But yeah, let's get into it. The offseason preview, we'll start there, and then we'll get into the coaching situation. Brian, I'll let you go on Sean Monahan here. Probably the most notable UFA. Tyler Toffoli probably gone. Lauren Brossoit probably gone. We'll touch more on that in a second, but maybe the most notable UFA on the Jets list. So Sean Monahan, what do you think? Is there a fit there? What do you think about his potential to come back next season with a new contract?
I think there's definitely a fit. And I mentioned in my article where In terms of fit, I think it's different for each party here, where I'm not exactly sure I see the total alignment on both team and player right now. I think the Jets would prefer to go a little bit shorter term. I mentioned in my article too, the team clearly views Brad Lambert quite highly,
Yes.
and the longer you go with Sean Monahan, the more likely it is that either A, you're blocking Lambert into either a bottom six, an AHL, or moving him off of his position that has developed him so much as a player at center and moving him to wing. So I
Yeah.
believe at least that the Jets are going to be looking for something 2 at most 3 years, um, and then sort of have the discussion of how you're going to use Monahan down the stretch there. But I think that Monahan wants somewhere between 3 and 5 years, I would think, and I just don't think that makes sense for the Jets at all.
Yeah. Matt saying it here, term for Monahan is everything. Doug saying it as well. If they send Monahan for more than 2 years, what does that say to Lambert? I I like the thing is, what is the dollar value that you're okay with that if Brad Lambert's better than Sean Monahan in training camp this year, Monahan's your 4C? Like what's the number? Because at
Oof.
anything more than 3.5, any 3, 4 million, like Sean Monahan can't be a $4 million fourth line center, right? I don't know what
Yeah.
his value is on the open market. I would assume somewhere in that 4 million range because he had a great year. Teams view him as like this big physical two-way center that can score, that can generate chances, is a good guy in the locker room.
He's like an 8-time
So
20 goal scorer.
yeah, like he's a veteran and he scores a lot of goals. So I don't know. Coming off this year, maybe it's higher than 4. Maybe I'm underselling that a little bit. But whatever that number is, it's too high to be your fourth line center. And
Yeah.
like you said, I don't like the thought of putting Brad Lambert on the wing. I don't like the thought of blocking him entirely from that second line center role if he's ready to go next season. Now, there is a scenario here where Brad Lambert's not ready to go next season, like he comes into training camp and maybe didn't progress the way the Jets had hoped. But I still think that he's coming off a year like it's a safe enough bet to think that he can, take that job with growing pains, of course, like there is for every single young player. But he was what, AHL first team all rookie. He was
Yeah,
the
second in rookie scoring.
yeah.
Um,
You got them all
it's
up here. You just wrote the article. Yeah. There you
absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. I guarantee you'll be able to just list off a bunch of stuff about Cole Perfetti because you just spent. I watched you toil away at that article.
Yes. Yes. We'll get into the Cole Perfetti one in a second here. But yeah, uh, the Monahan thing, I don't. The more I think about it, the more I don't think he's coming back because he, I think, can get term and money on the open market. Like I think that is a possibility. Um, and I don't think the Jets want to pay that and block Lambert and block all this youth movement that's going to be coming in the next year or two. Will there be growing pains? Will the Jets maybe be a worse team in the short term? Maybe for the first 30 games of next season because of it? Maybe. But there's also a scenario where Brad Lambert comes into training camp and looks amazing and is a second line center, or he comes in and looks okay. You give him the second line center, you give him some runway, and he picks it up as the year goes along. So I'm kind of more on the side of not re-signing Sean Monahan than I am re-signing Sean Monahan, which if you asked me right when the horn sounded on game 5, I would have said, yeah, re-sign Sean Monahan. Like, why are you asking me that? But now, I read your article, kind of opened my eyes a little bit to the blockage that could happen there. So
Well, I'll be
there's a
honest. Like
lot.
that
Yeah.
that article for me, I didn't actually go into it saying I don't think it works out in terms of the Lambert situation until I was writing it.
Mhm.
Like you saw me. The initial plan was to write a article that had all of the Jets UFAs and sort of giving the lowdown on their usage, their role, what their expectations are, that sort of thing. And then
Yeah.
I unintentionally reached the word count by just talking about Monahan. And
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe I don't know if Monahan should come back because I just kept writing about how it makes more sense to either go short term or not at all. So
Yeah.
I don't know anymore.
Like what's the max? 2 years? And then in the second year of
At
that,
the
Monahan,
absolute max. Like, that's the thing. Like, I don't think you can hold Lambert out that long. Like, he took such an incredible leap this year on a very inconsistent Moose team.
yeah,
And the fact that he was able to do that and step into a first line center role, uh, having not played center in like 2 seasons, goes to show a lot about his comfort at that position. And I truly think that if you move him off of that after having his first good pro season,
mhm,
I think you'd be stifling him and kind of doing a disservice to a guy who's putting in the work, because clearly there was discussions had with the organization, because there was some conversations about his effort level. He got sent back to junior.
right,
It was sort of deemed that he wasn't ready yet. He came in, he had put on some weight. He looked like he got faster somehow,
yeah.
and then became a fantastic center with the Moose this year. So if you move him off of that, it doesn't. I know it goes back to what Doug said. What does that say to Lambert?
Yeah. Yeah, because you are blocking him. Sorry, I'm messing with my lights here. I know people could probably tell, but I got this weird outline around it.
Listen, at least
Anyways,
it doesn't turn off like mine did in the middle of episode what
right.
90 was it?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. I think this is a good point here because Kyle Connor, he was maybe ready, and then they started him with the Moose, and he played what, like 4 games, and then came up. I think
It
that
made him for
situation,
sure ready.
yes, that made him for sure ready. But I think the best scenario to execute that, maybe starting Lambert with the Moose, giving him a few games to warm up, get some games in, and then bring him up if that's what they want to do, is to have Vladislav Nemeskov be your second line center for the first 10 games of the season. I mean, he was the second line center for the first 3 months, and the Jets were the number 1 team in the NHL over that time. So
Yeah.
he can hold his own in that spot. And then I think if you bring in a Brad Lambert and you think he's ready for that role, then it's a lot easier to move Nemeskov down to the third or fourth line than it is Sean Monahan, who you just paid 5 years at $4 million or whatever, if you sign him long term, right? So I'm more on that side of things now than I am the re-sign Monahan camp, given all the information that has come out in the last little bit. Tyler Toffoli and Laurent Brossoit, just a quick word on both because I think everyone knows that both of them are gone. Tyler Toffoli, 30 goal scorer for many years now. His exit interviews, he kind of seemed like he'd been waiting to test free agency for a while. It's something that he's earned, so he's going to take it, and someone's going to outbid the Jets for him. And then Laurent Brossoit, he just played absolutely unreal this year in a backup role. Played so well that he's probably going to get 1A, 1B money somewhere. Not 1A, 1B money, like $3 million to be a not a backup, but a other starter. So
I think a
what
lot
do
of
you
people
think
will
about?
sort of go the way of the Bruins, where they have
Yes.
2 solid goalies that obviously this year it changed, where the perception is now there's a clear number 1 where it's Swayman. But in like last year, especially with the Bruins having like the best season in recent memory, obviously it didn't
Mhm.
work out in the playoffs, but I digress.
Yeah.
They viewed though that both Allmark and Swayman were effectively providing the same value. So they literally alternated half the season. I could see Bressois
Yeah.
stepping into he showed that he was good enough to split time with Hellebuck. Can he up his workload but still not be like a number 1?
Yeah. Well, I don't know, a team like the LA Kings or the New Jersey Devils, like a team that's a playoff team but doesn't have a starter, might give him $3 million, 3.5 million, maybe 3.5 is too much, 2.5, $3 million to be a cheaper starting option. Like, I don't know, if he went to the Kings and it was him and Cam Talbot, like that's a 1A, 1B scenario, but Brossoit is probably the game 1 playoff starter. I mean, if all things go well, given how well Brossoit played this year. Um,
Yeah.
and Jets fans, I think also there's a little bit of, I don't know, I kind of want to relate it to another like prominent athlete in the city, because I feel like this happens a lot where players who are extremely humble and like a backup goalie like Laurent Brossoit, or like a backup quarterback like a Drew Brown. There we go. When they succeed and they move on and go somewhere else, there's a lot of like, thank you, we appreciate it, and we'll be rooting for you, rather than like a PLD where it's like, screw this guy, you know. Um, there's a different vibe around Laurent Brossoit leaving than there is any other player. Like, it just feels like, yeah, Laurent Brossoit was amazing, but Jets fans realize that he played too well, and he's gonna have to cash in somewhere, and he's earned that. And I think Jets fans are excited to root for him elsewhere. I get that vibe. Got it with Drew Brown as well, who played well in Zach Collaros' absence. The same thing will happen for Brossoit. Toffoli, I already mentioned him. He's going to test free agency. Who else do we got? Dylan DeMello and Brendan Dillon, the defenseman.
Yeah.
I think that's it for UFAs. So just talk about the defense core in general. DeMello played a top pairing role. Dillon played a second pairing role. Dillon's 33 now. DeMello's 31. DeMello said he's looking for a little bit of term on his deal in his next one. What do you think about these two defensemen? How do you think the defense core looks next year? There's a lot of moving parts here, but I'll let you go ahead first.
I feel like the likelihood of both of them coming back, it likely depends on who moves out and who they get in return, because I feel like it's hard for me to kind of project, because there's a lot of conversations about how the Jets need to prioritize getting a top 4 defenseman via trade in the offseason, and I know that that's where a lot of the times Nikolai Ehlers' name comes in.
Yeah.
I need to see that, but as it stands, let's say they don't move anything and it's just Ehlers stays, there's no top 4 guy coming in. I think there's a very high likelihood that at the very least DeMello comes back, and there's deep conversations with Dillon about coming back, but in a little bit of a, hey, we're probably only going to sign for 1 year because we've got some other guys coming in. I know that Brendan Dillon loves the city. He was frustrated when he didn't have the chats with the organization before the end of the playoffs. I think that it makes sense for the Jets to prioritize Dylan DeMello over Brendan Dillon, just because of what DeMello has done for with Josh Morrissey over the last several seasons. And even if Brendan Dillon comes back, it's hard to see him being as solid as he was here, as we were talking about with his age, because obviously struggled down the stretch, but a lot of that was that pairing in general. His isolated results, though, have been really, really good this year comparatively to some years past. So he's a good, tough, that guy that you really like in the room.
Yes.
But I'm not sure if it fits going more than, similarly to like the Monahan thing, we're down the stretch more than a year or two, when even this year there's going to be some chances of some guys moving in. Elias Salmonson might be coming into the picture late this year or late next year into the year after. So you have to start wondering sort of, when do you take the risk of maybe you lose a Brendan Dillon, but then a guy like Ville Heinola steps in and becomes the guy you were hoping he would?
I was just about to bring up Ville Heinola, because I think, Brendan Dillon and Ville Heinola have played together a little bit, and they actually posted pretty good results. And I think if you brought Dillon back on maybe a 2-year deal, and he's your third pairing defenseman next season, with Ville Heinola, that's a really strong third pair. I think you got a physical defensive guy, and you've got a puck mover, kind of take that responsibility off of Brendan Dillon a little bit in a third pairing role, sheltered. And I thought he had a great year this year. Yeah, that pairing struggled a lot at times, but we've talked a lot about where we think the struggles lie for that pairing, and I don't think it was on Brendan Dillon's shoulders. As for him wanting to be here, that is something that has been evident from day one. He said he was frustrated, like you said, in the post-season presser, that he didn't have a contract yet. Funny enough, I spoke with him, I think, training camp, saying like, you're a pending UFA, like, how does that affect your approach to the season? And even then he was like, yeah, there haven't been talks, and that like kind of sucks, but I wish there were. And clearly there still haven't been talks all this time later. But yeah, he's a guy who clearly wants to stay here, has wanted to stay here, loves it here ever since he got traded here. And the Jets, if they are able to, I think a third pairing role for Brendan Dillon next year would be perfect. Kind of mentoring and grandfathering in Ville Heinola on that third pair. Let Dylan Sandberg step up and take the tough pairing minutes as he hits his prime as a player. Let Dylan step back, be a veteran presence in the room. I kind of like that. And now Dylan DeMello, I think the same thing. I mean, you talk about Nikolai Ehlers, whether or not he gets traded for a top 4 defenseman who would most likely be of the right shot variety. If you're able to bring back a guy to play with Josh Morrissey somehow, or just a top 4 right-handed defenseman, like DeMello can still play with Morrissey, but someone else maybe to plug the second pairing role. And then you were to bring back DeMello and go Morrissey, either new player or DeMello, Sandberg, DeMello, or new player, new defenseman, and then Dylan Heinola. I think that's a really strong defense core for opening night next season. I don't know what you think about the DeMello thing, because he clearly wants 3-4 years, 31 years old, struggled down the stretch, but so did everyone. Or at least in the playoffs, I mean. But yeah, where are you at with DeMello? I'm sort of in the camp that you can give him the term and the money, but to be a second pairing guy with Dylan Sandberg going forward rather than a top pairing guy, despite the chemistry he's had with Morrissey.
No, I think it's apparent that it wasn't his best season. Like I feel like last season with Morrissey was a true testament to how solid he is. And maybe it was the fact that I noticed that DeMello got a little bit more aggressive this year in terms of his transition game, jumping into the rushes, stuff like that. So I think that maybe that really maybe dampened the idea of him being that stabilizing force alongside Morrissey and allowing Morrissey to go and do whatever he deemed necessary to try and put the team on his back. But I do still like what Dylan DeMello brings to this defensive group. I don't think there's a situation where I would feel great about moving on from him if you don't have someone of equally solid defensive and transition variety coming in.
Yes. Yeah. I think a lot of people in chat are talking about Pionk as well. Pionk, Schmidt, they each have 1 year left on their deals at 5.8, 5.9 each.
Yeah.
I think maybe you see Schmidt's contract moved, but Neil Pionk, I think, is a Winnipeg Jet next year. After that, I think there will be a conversation on whether or not that he gets extended beyond that point. But hey, last time Neil Pionk played in a contract year, he got the contract he's currently on. So maybe he has a resurgence next year, big bounce back year, and then the outlook of this defense core, what we just talked about, changes quite a bit. But I agree, like DeMello's that guy that lets Morrissey kind of just roam and do what he does while he's more the defensive option. But I think there's a possibility that they bring him back not on that top pairing. And I think that would be good. Like Sandberg and DeMello could be a true shutdown pairing that you play against the other teams, one of their top 2 lines, right?
Absolutely.
Well, you'll have to.
They wouldn't
They're
do
a top
anything
4.
offensively, but they would stop you.
Exactly. And that's Winnipeg Jets hockey, at least as it stands today, before we know the new head coach. Quickly, before we do move on to the head coaching talk, let's talk about the RFAs. I believe it is David Gustafson and Cole Perfetti and Logan Stanley. The one that's going to get the most money, Cole Perfetti. Where are you at with him? We'll start with him. Cole Perfetti. Where are you at? Bridge contract? That's what I wrote in my piece. I think we're looking at a bridge. Where are you at with Perfetti as we near the draft?
Yeah, I am 100% sold on the fact that it's going to be a bridge deal. I like from both player and team perspective, it makes a lot of sense just based on where everything has sort of come to rest. I know the team wants to see him do that over a full 82 game season, and I know Perfetti wants to see that he'll get the opportunity to do so. So, if you can bridge, see what happens with the the coaching situation, whether they're willing to actually stick with Cole Perfetti, I think that you're going to see a bridge somewhere in between the $3.5 and $4 million range. And then they'll take it from there, and hoping that Cole Perfetti is given the chance to thrive in that top 6.
Yes. Matt bringing up a great point here. Hanel is also an RFA, so we'll talk about him as well. But Cole Perfetti, I'm going to bring this up because this is exactly what I wrote. I wrote that Velarde was coming off a year where he was in and out of the lineup, mainly due to injury. Perfetti, not injured. He was just in and out of the lineup for other reasons. But their stats in those years were very comparable. I think Perfetti's camp won't want to go long-term because they believe that given a top 6 role for a full season, his numbers could explode. Maybe he gets top power play minutes in one of those 2 years as well, and his numbers really jump. And I think the Jets like doing 2-year deals as well. Maybe they do go or try and go long term, but I just don't see the Perfetti camp accepting that. I do think the Velarde deal is a great comparable, though, and I wrote that. So 2 years, 3.5. I think Velarde's 3.43. So anywhere in that range. Maybe the cap has jumped a little bit, so maybe Perfetti goes to 3.75 or 4, like you said. But I think we're looking exactly as you said at that deal, and Perfetti is going to be in a top 6 role next year because, like we said, Monahan might be gone, Toffoli might be gone, Ehlers might be gone. Someone needs to be in the top 6, and Cole Perfetti's that guy. And I think in that on that deal, that could be a value still at $3.5 million for the next 2 years, much like a Dylan Sandberg, who they signed for 2 years at 1.4, and that's been a value. And Gabe Velarde at 3.4, that's been a value as well. So I think they're going to do that. They're going to get value out of those 2 years, and then you go from there. And if Perfetti excels, you have no issues giving him a long-term deal off of that, right? Ville Heinola. Let's talk about him we talk about him and Stanley at the same time, 2 defensemen who are kind of vying for that third pair, kind of a depth role in the NHL. What do you think Ville Heinola, like, he resigns, I guess? Like, I don't know. I feel like he's been in RFA a few times now. Like, what is he, or is this his first
I think, yeah, because he
contract?
was
I
drafted
don't know.
in 2019, I believe.
Yeah. So this
So
is
yeah, he's
his first contract. Never mind. Right. Yeah.
but
Okay.
yeah, I could see him signing a deal in which he negotiates with his camp for the fact that he will not be in the AHL next season, which is true regardless of whether he sits or plays. Um, I Like, he loses his waiver eligibility, and as we know,
Mm,
the Jets are
right.
strongly against possibly losing someone on waivers. So whether he is in the press box or he's in the lineup, Ville Heinola is a Winnipeg Jet next season. He will not be a Manitoba Moose.
I
And
think so too.
what is going to happen there is then I think Ville's going to say, "Oh, if I'm going to be on the NHL roster and be given the chance to play, then I want something a little bit more from my contract because I'm not going to be a league minimum bounce between the AHL and NHL anymore." So I could see him doing like a year or two at
Mhm.
maybe a million, mil five, even
Yeah.
just to sort of be like, "Okay, you could get the chance to really succeed on this third pairing." But we'll see what happens after this 2 years is up.
Yeah. I think, yeah, 2 years, 1 million, maybe 1 year. I don't know. But Ville Heinola, like you said, Winnipeg Jet next year. He's not going to be put down to the Moose. And if he is, he'll get claimed off of waivers. So,
Yep.
Matt saying the same thing. And then Logan Stanley, I think if he does resign, you're looking at the same thing, 1 to 2 years, 1 million depth defenseman contract, playing for that 7th defenseman role, depending on all the guys who do or do not come back, like we just talked about with DeMello and Dylan. Just quickly, I know questions are later on, but I do want to bring this up because Iafallo has 1 year left at $4 million. And a lot of people are talking about, Pionk and Schmidt's contracts as ones that could potentially be traded for more cap. Iafallo has legit value. And at $4 million,
Mhm.
if he's going to be on your 4th line next season, that's overpaying for a 4th line player. I know he moved up now and then when there were injuries throughout the season, but that could be a player where they think, you know what, $4 million on our 4th line. He has value league wide. He's a great 4-checker, middle 6 option. You could get a solid asset. Like you wouldn't have to, like a Nate Schmidt, attach an asset to get rid of the contract. You could just get an asset for Alex Iafallo in the last year of his deal. And if the Jets aren't in a playoff spot, he'll be a guy that's traded at the deadline too. So maybe they keep him for that. But yeah, I think does that cover all of the UFAs and RFAs? David
We didn't
Gustafson
talk, yeah,
is going to
Gus or
sign 1 year, 1 mil. Like, I don't know. He's a
yeah,
fourth line player. He's not going to sign an 8x8 or anything like that. So,
no,
I think that's everyone, is it?
I
Believe
believe
so.
so.
Okay, let's quickly let's take a break and then we'll come back with the coaching search. Talk about some NHL playoff games that have happened over the last couple days. Let's there's a new ad break, so don't be startled. But it's a new ad break. But we will be right back. Thanks for being with us on episode 13 of LFP Live Mother's Day edition. Stick around after the break.
Hey, Level Flight fans. You were probably just watching us chat something about the Jets, or who knows, it's, almost summer now, so we could be talking Gold Eyes, we could be talking Bombers, we could be talking Sea Bears. I don't know what we were talking about. What we're talking about now, though, as you wait for us to come back, is where you can find us when you're not watching or listening to these episodes. You can find us on social media. That's talking Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, all of those platforms at Level Flight WPG. That's where you can find all of our content. You can sort of keep in contact with us. You don't have to worry about losing, an episode here or there. You can just keep up to date. With that in mind, too, you should probably go and subscribe to our YouTube channel and click that little bell. If you do that, you will never miss another episode release, and you'll be right there for the premiere every single time it comes out. This summer, we've got a lot of stuff planned. We're going to do our regular sort of off-season stuff for the Jets. The draft's coming up. Free agency's coming up, but we're also going to do our regular coverage into the other Winnipeg sports scenes. So, we've got a lot of content on the Gold Eye. Should be a great season there. Sea Bears are starting up soon. The Bombers just had, they're starting the rookie camp now. So, exciting times ahead. So, as you wait for us to come back, which we'll be back very shortly, think about that. Go subscribe, like this video, and just enjoy the rest of the episode. Follow us on all our socials, and I'm going to send it back to, us. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
Welcome back into LFP Live, the 13th edition, the Teemu Selanne edition, or the present day Gabriel Velarde edition. But that was a new ad break that we had right there. Just telling people to like and subscribe, as we tell you every single Sunday. If you're here with us, thank you for being here, making us a part of your Mother's Day. Hit the like, hit the subscribe button. Let's talk about the coaching carousel, Brian. It is moving because there's a lot of vacancies. There's been 19 head coaches fired or have retired in Rick Bonus's case.
I think I saw that Martin St. Louis is like the fourth longest tenured coach in the league now, and he's been there for like 2 years.
Oh my goodness. I brought this up on the last episode. I'll bring it up again here. The show me a good goalie and I'll show you a good coach thing has resulted in coaches being fired across the league so quickly. You want to know why? Because there's no good goalies in the NHL anymore. That's not hyperbole. There's just no more. Like Connor Hellebuyck's the last one. No, I'm kidding.
Well, the league average save percentage dropped so much this year. Everyone was awful.
It tanked, which is like I brought it up on the last episode. You show me a bad goalie, I'll show you a coach who just got fired. Because that's what happened with the 19 head coaches that have gone in the last season and a half, which is ridiculous numbers. But there's a lot of names out there, a lot of vacancies out there. Let's just talk about NHL wide before we get to the Jets. Craig Berube, Todd McClellan seem to be the favorites in Toronto. Sheldon Keefe, Berube, and I think Woodcroft I saw in New Jersey. And then I haven't really seen much as to the Sharks and teams like that who are rebuilding and need a coach. But where do you think, let's start with Berube and Sheldon Keefe. And then we'll use Sheldon Keefe to talk about the Jets because we didn't talk about him last time. But where do you think Berube ends up?
I am very much struggling to see a world where he doesn't end up in Toronto. Like it feels almost like a foregone conclusion. I don't know exactly, when it gets done. But Berube in Toronto makes a lot of sense because he kind of fits what their, end of season press conference was talking about, playing the right way and, doing that whole thing where they, I guess, just want someone to try and push them over the hump, with the same roster again. So, we'll see. But no, that feels very much like the way it's going to go.
I agree. There's been a lot of talk. There was talk of Berube going to Toronto like the day Sheldon Keefe was fired, or even before Sheldon Keefe was fired. It was like I saw people spitting out that rumor. So I think he's Toronto bound. Todd McClellan, there's like betting lines for all of this stuff, and Todd McClellan has shot up in the betting lines like crazy apparently, which would be so funny because the Leafs are clearly, they have all these skilled, talented players, but they're trying to get like big and boring. So them going to get Todd McClellan to play like the 1-3-1 would just be hilarious. I'm sorry, it would just be so funny. Could you imagine like William Nylander playing the 1-3-1? Like, I don't know, man. It'd be funny. Just to watch the core four get put in kind of a box like that. And just they're just galaxy braining themselves. Like the fact, this is a whole nother conversation, but these are all coin flip games that they've lost in these game sevens. And the core four, like the Florida series wasn't a coin flip series. Florida steamrolled them. But this last Bruins one was a coin flip. And
Well, it's just so funny to me that the front office and whoever's in charge can't see the fact that the issue is not, oh, you have to get, down and dirty. It's the fact that they can't score a goal. Like
exactly.
you have 4 guys who are making up the entirety of your offense, and then everyone else is either a dude who can just grind and play defense and nothing, or someone who does nothing entirely. So
Necessary
they
grit,
went out.
Ryan.
I mean, they went out, they got
Necessary
Reeves, they got Bertuzzi, they got Domi. I don't think grit is the issue. Like Jake McCabe is out there absolutely steamrolling dudes every game. Like you've got a lot of guys in there who play the quote unquote heavy way. The grit's not the issue anymore. They went out and did that, and guess what? They still lost in the first round. They can't score a goal. The last 3 seasons in the games, in terms of they actually had to score to stay alive, they've scored like 1, 2, and 1 goals. So
Yeah, exactly. And it's not about physicality, mental toughness. There you go. They need the mental grit. That's a great point. And you know what? Yeah, fatally flawed roster construction. I don't know. There's a lot of questions on that. We won't get into. Well, we'll stay on the Leafs because we'll talk about Sheldon Keefe now. But
yeah,
committing $40 million to 4 players or whatever it is a little flawed, I'd say. Kind of like the Jets in some way. Yeah, well, the Jets have their money spread out a little bit more, but some of it's just places. But let's talk about Sheldon Keefe. We talked about coaches on the last episode of LFP, and at that time, Keefe was still a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think it was that day actually that he released that video from Winnipeg Beach there, standing on the. I'm kidding. It's probably in somewhere super tropical, but yeah, he released that video kind of saying Leafs Nation, thanks. It was a classy way to go out. It was a great video. What do you think about the potential of Sheldon Keefe being the Jets head coach for the present and future?
Honestly, I wouldn't mind it. I think that the Jets need a little bit more get up and go offensively, a bit more consistency that way. Obviously, we saw that the defensive game for them was the backbone of their structure, but the second they faced a team that was significantly faster than them, they couldn't keep up. And I do legitimately think that Keefe has such a bad reputation because he was like 16-21 in his career playoff
Because of
games.
this. You want to know why he has a bad reputation? Because of this.
Like
But
when
yeah.
you lead the team to, I think he had like almost 300 regular season wins in, I think, what, 5 seasons, 6 seasons?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, you are doing what it takes in the regular season. Clearly, it's the players at this point when you run back the same roster for 5 consecutive seasons and don't change anything meaningful. They don't move any of the core guys when it's not working. And now they fire their coach and they're like, now this is when we move someone. I truly think that Keefe, with a roster that can actually be, moved around, could be a good fit. And I think that with the Jets, he has the aggressiveness that they lacked, especially in that playoff game, that playoff series against the Avalanche, where they had zero, they had no idea what to do when the Avs were coming at them full speed. They also couldn't counter them full speed. They just kept dumping the puck in. You wouldn't see that with Sheldon Keefe's game style. He's always been someone who's very much, if you're going to try and outscore me, I'm going to try and slow you down and then counter. And I felt like this year was for the Jets is we're going to try and slow you down. And for the most part in the regular season, it worked. And then they were able to be opportunistic. In the playoffs, they tried to slow the Avalanche down. Didn't work. Got steamrolled.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, yeah, Keefe can be patient. His extension with the Leafs kicks in next season, but he is already fired. So for the next 2 years, he will be getting paid by the Leafs. And if he coaches somewhere else, which I think the interest is there in the video, he said he's taking a break from media as he was on like some beach, clearly just on vacation, enjoying life. But I think he is going to coach this year, and I think he's going to get a head coaching job real quick. Whether
Yeah.
that's New Jersey, which I think he'd be a perfect fit for New Jersey's system as well. I think he's going to get a job. This, I think, is another thing. Everyone's bringing up the roster construction. Morgan Riley's not a number one. And the fact that they've got all this money committed to all these players up front who don't score in big games, and then your goaltending is spotty year after year, and then your defense is spotty, and Morgan Riley is at best a jack instead of a king or a queen defense card, as Stacy puts it here, right? I think there's a lot that he maybe dragged that team a little bit given how their roster was constructed. Because yeah, and I think a big thing as well with Sheldon Keefe, and why I'm on board with it as well, is the handling of young players. This is something that we brought up on the last episode, saying no matter who the coach is, you got to be able to coach the young players, give them an opportunity, develop players. And Keefe spent time in the AHL, won a Calder Cup in the AHL, and Matthew Nyes, I think, is enough of an example of a young player who they signed straight out of college. He went straight into a top six role. He's been playing a massive role for the Leafs ever since. And he was maybe their best player, one of their best players in that first round series against the Bruins. I think I'd have faith in Sheldon Keefe developing the young players on the Winnipeg Jets, that being a Cole Perfetti or a Ville Heinola or a Rutger McGroarty starting next season. I think he's almost the right guy to do that. He's one of the youngest coaches. I think he is the youngest coach that is being talked about here. Berube, McClellan, Woodcroft. Maybe Woodcroft is around that age too. I think Keefe is 43. He's definitely one of the youngest. And I think his ability to develop the young players would be the best course of action for the Jets going forward. And
I do
this
have
is another thing. Yeah, go ahead.
I do have a few doubts in terms of his development
Me
of younger
too.
players, because there obviously there's the Nyes situation where clearly he was given the ability to succeed.
Yeah.
But my thing that I get concerned about is the idea of how Timothy Liljegren didn't really get a chance to play in the top four
Yeah.
until this season. Rasmus Sandin wasn't played consistently enough and then was eventually traded. I still think they had something there in Nicholas Robertson that I don't think they have anymore, but they never gave him a chance to actually play above like the fourth line. And then they would sit him and send him back down to the Marlies. So you get the Nyes effect there, where obviously it shows that it works, but you have it's two sides of every coin, where you also have a few guys there where it was clear until this season they weren't really given the shot to be in that position to succeed, like Liljegren, who I think most Leaf fans would agree he is the guy that can actually step up, but he was on the third pairing and being rotated out for Connor Timmins for no reason in particular.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. There is concerns, and I think there's concerns with every coach. And those are very valid concerns, because I've been a fan of Liljegren. Is that how you say it? I don't know. But I've been a fan of his for a long time. His analytics have always been stellar. They decide not to play him. And that happens with the Jets too. We've seen that many times. It might be why Nikolai Ehlers is leaving this offseason, right? I think as important as the head coach is bringing in, or maybe not just bringing in new coaches to run the penalty kill and power play, but just improving those systems, because like Matt says here, that cost the Jets a lot of games this year. And in the first round against the Avs, it did them no favors, especially the penalty kill. I think they've got to switch up either the system or the coaches teaching the system for the special teams, because that was a big disappointment. And there's a lot of talented players on the ice. you have got Josh Morrissey, you've got Gabriel Velarde at the side of the net, you've got Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele. That power play should be at worst league average. And then the penalty kill, like the Jets aren't full of these defensemen, like shutdown guys, but the penalty kill being, what was it, bottom like 7 in the league, that was for a contender, that was unacceptable. And that needs to change next season as well. 100%. Yeah, this is it. Like I saw a post after the first round ended that basically said the 8 teams that all won the special teams battle in their series. And yeah, that a little bit that was really close and it was a coincidence, but it's also the teams that were way at the top that won their special teams battles swept, or the Avalanche, who crushed the Jets in special teams, won in 5 games. And the only game the Jets won was just a random like shootout game that the Jets somehow pulled away. So special teams, I think, is as important, or the special teams coaches or the systems is as important as the head coach. Obviously, I think for the long term, the head coach is more important given the development of the younger players that we brought up here. But there's a lot to think about when it comes to Sheldon Keefe. Is there any other names that have popped up over the last couple of days here that have interested you that maybe we didn't talk about in the last episode, or people aren't talking about enough?
I don't necessarily think so. The biggest one for me is still the idea of bringing in like a Todd Nelson. But then you also
C-Mac is there
have,
too.
but like guys that are a little bit younger and a little bit less proven in the league, where you have a bit more of an unknown, but I'd take the unknown over a bunch of guys who've been around and fired several times. So try something new. Clearly hiring these guys that, could maybe win you a few more games in the short term. Why not hire someone who might, turn the outlook of the franchise a little bit different? So I still think Nelson is up there for me. I still think Woodcroft is up there for me. These younger guys, these unproven guys in the NHL, really, I think should be the future of where they take things.
Yeah. If Rod Brind'Amour is available, he's my number 1 as well.
100%.
I think with Rod Brind'Amour, his reputation is a little bit better than the coach he actually is. Like, he's never won a game past the second round. And how much of that is the roster? How much of that is him? I'm not sure. They just throw pucks on net, and sometimes it's to a fault. They just don't generate enough good chances because they're just throwing the puck on net from the blue line all the time. But I still think he's a fantastic head coach. I just don't think he's this, like, Brind'Amour's been a top 5 head coach for ever since he stepped in.
Yeah.
And I think that's, like, if you look at his resume, it's just not there, right? Todd Nelson, I think as well. Todd Nelson is the kind of guy where Rick Bowness maybe felt like a stopgap head coach, almost like to get the culture right, and to bring this team back to the playoffs. Todd Nelson can be the guy that could be your coach. Like, it's a big swing, but he could be your coach for a long time. He could be your coach for the remainder of Connor Hellebuck's contract if things go well, because he has that resume in the AHL with the Hershey Bears, where some of these guys don't. Sheldon Keefe has that resume with the Marlies, but then struggled with the Leafs. But again, these are the shots you've got to take. And not Dave Hackstall. That's are there any names?
Not Hackstall, not McClellan for me. Like, it's
I think
those 2 names. I do not want to see them anywhere near the Jets roster.
I think I think Hackstall, I've seen too many stories that are just not what I want to hear. And then also, what about like Dean Evison? We talked about him last time. Just a quick hit. Yeah, Coach Q as well. But Dean Evison, what are your thoughts on, from Flin Flon? Thoughts on him?
I
being
mean,
the
I'm
head
not
coach this year?
exactly like vehemently opposed. I'm not sure he fits where the Jets roster is going, but he did manage to, turn things a bit more exciting in Minnesota, because let's be real, that team was notoriously boring for several years.
Yeah.
But he helped, bring more of a player out of Joel Eriksson Ek. He helped Kirill Kaprizov, do his thing. Matt Boldy There's still some questions about some of the younger, similar to Keefe, where there's some guys who have succeeded. Um, some guys who have succeeded, who are younger, other guys who have been a little bit buried. It's hard to, to see a coach and not have that, but I don't think Evison would be the worst choice. I actually wouldn't have like massive qualms with it, but I do still think there's better options.
I agree. I'm gonna leave it at that because I agree. Wild could improve next season. Yeah, they have they have all this dead money wrapped up in Suter and Parise, who are playing each other in the second round here. And then they have money wrapped up in other veterans as well. There's a lot there. I talked about Suter and Parise last night. They played together or played against each other. Dallas winning that one 4-1, taking a 2-1 series lead. Logan Stankoven, what is he, 20 years old? 2 goals in a playoff game. Who would have thought young players could contribute?
He was the only one who had more points than Brad Lambert in the AHL this year.
Hey man, that's all you got to say right there.
We're going to start a dialogue.
We are going to start a dialogue. Yes. Let's talk about the Canes stayed alive with a 4-3 win. Their power play finally scored. With 3 minutes left, Brady Shea, they stay alive. That series is going back to New York. Where are you at with the playoffs? What series is kind of interesting, most interesting to you? And where do you think these series kind of shake out as we approach the midway point in almost all of them, or past the midway point?
I feel like for me, the one that was and still continues to be the most interesting to me is that Dallas-Colorado series.
Mm-hmm.
Dallas blew that lead in game 1, but since then have looked, for the most part, pretty rock solid, especially in game 3 there. I truly think that sort of going forward, what I'm looking for here is, can Dallas string together 2 games of them not having these moments of panic and allowing Colorado back into it? But another one that I'm watching for different reasons is the Bruins Panthers series. Obviously, that one might come to an end in the next couple games here, but that I just watch because of the chaos and the stupidity and the unnecessary violence. Because I think they were told by the NHL that, like, hey, we're going to keep watching you a little bit tighter because don't get extra stupid here. But no, like that on the eastern side there, it's not going to be as close of a series, I don't think, but it is going to be as chaotic of a series as you could possibly hope for.
Agreed. And I think the series that has kind of shifted the most for me is Vancouver Edmonton. Mm-hmm. I'll admit it. I said, what was it, 2 episodes ago? I thought it would be Oilers in 5. I didn't think Vancouver had a chance, but man, they are stepping up. These games have been fantastic. They've been so much fun to watch. The comeback in game 1 and then overtime in game 2. Game 3 goes tonight in Edmonton. That barn will be rocking. And it's going to be, that series for me, I think, has overtaken the Dallas-Colorado series. Dallas-Colorado, I'm watching last night, and it still feels like every rush up the ice, you have the potential to see like a top 10 goal of all time. Every time Nathan McKinnon starts galloping, every time Cale Makar does that thing with his hips where he's like moving laterally but skating at full speed, it's ridiculous. But it's something that they scored 1 goal last night, and I was still like sitting there in awe of how talented these players are. They're so much fun to watch, and I want them to win, and I want the Oilers to win, because a 6 or 7 game series between the Oilers and Avs would just be hockey heaven. And that would be really fun. But that series between Vancouver and Edmonton has overtaken the Dallas one for me. And yeah, it's something that game 3 goes tonight. I'm super pumped. We're going to open the question segment of the podcast, like it says right there. So drop your questions below. We're going to end the episode with this, as we do every time on LFP Live. Once again, thanks for joining us. Mother's Day edition, LFP Live number 13. And then while you're down there, drop it a comment, hit the like, hit the subscribe button, and the notification bell so you don't miss LFP Live next Sunday, which is actually doubtful because it is May long, and I know a lot of people go away, and we might be going away. So we'll keep you updated.
Wait, when we were talking beforehand, you said questionable. You've downgraded to doubtful. What is this, the NFL like injury report?
Yeah. An hour ago it was questionable. Now it's like doubtful. We'll see. Maybe LFP Live number 14 will be the next weekend in May. But while we're here, drop a question below, and we will get to as many as we can. Let's start with Matt Hyman. Brian, throwing this one to you. How often do you guys go to Bombers, Goldeyes, and Sea Bears games? Start with you on this one.
So I'm gonna start with Goldeyes because the easy answer is all of them.
Yeah.
But not as a fan. I work there, so I am. I'm part of the media team there, so I will very regularly be in the press box for games. More often than not, I think last year I worked 49 of 50 home games, so it's kind of my second home during the summer. As a I still watch as a fan from my spot up high there. I'm there all the time. Bombers, I'm usually able to go out to 2, 3, maybe 4 games a year. Try to get to the Western Final every time they make it. But
Yeah.
and then Sea Bears, I'm ashamed to admit, I have never been to a Sea Bears game as of yet. But
Got to change.
that being said, a lot of their games last year happened when I was stuck at the ballpark. So I was, working real hard last year to put out some content for them. So wasn't really able to, get on over to Canada Life Center there. But maybe this year I might be able to find the ability to do so. And then, I know that you've been there a fair amount, Connor. I know you're at the Bomber games a lot. And why don't you talk about your Goldeyes involvement as well?
Yes, I do also work for the Goldeyes in a more limited capacity than Brian does. Brian does all the graphics and the media team, stuff like that. I am in the press box. There's a camera on the lower level. If you're in the seats, you could probably look up and see me, but I'm working the press box camera. I did it last year. It was a blast. Camera operations, something I never thought I'd be doing, but hey, I learned it in school. It's great. I'm just sitting there taking in a Goldeyes game, and I just got to move this camera around. It's fun. As for the Bombers and Sea Bears games, my family has season tickets. Bombers were 209, right on the 50, about 10 rows up. And then Sea Bears, we are big Sea Bears fans. Row 1, not of the courtside seats. So row 1 of the seats. And then there's the floor seats in front of us. But when I say row 1, it's not like we're right on the court. But still incredible seats. And I go to every game. I love going to these summer games, especially Bomber games. The weather, everything's so nice. Sea Bears growing so much. Goldeyes. I mean, I'm not taking it in as a fan, but still nothing better than a Goldeyes game on a gorgeous summer night. Valor games, I have not been to one.
I've been to one.
I haven't, and I'm sorry. I'm not gonna go. I don't know. I'm just not a big soccer fan. That's just not my sport. Have you been wanting to get to more or no? Just it is what it is.
I mean, I've got a Valor jersey hanging around here somewhere, but
nice.
let's be honest, they haven't exactly been successful either. I'd be more inclined to go check it out if they were, able to. I think pretty sure we were talking about this where they're the only team in the league at this point who hasn't made a playoff berth.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. Whatever. I won't crap on Valor too much because I know a lot of people do like it, and I respect that. And soccer's the biggest sport in the
100%.
world. So totally. Adam, how disappointed would you guys be if Chevy decides to shift to Arneal as head coach? I know very little about coaches. Yeah, well, I'll preface this by saying coaches, I don't know, we could sit here and say that certain guys develop certain young players the right way, and we like that, or the way that their teams play is good. But at the end of the day, if they promoted Arneal, that isn't an immediate oh my god, the Jets are screwed. It is what it is. I think there are better options out there, but he's kind of the safe pick as to he did well with the Jets last year, former Jet, former Moose coach. I think he's the safer pick, but I'd like to see them do a search. And I think if they do a search, he won't be the guy that they choose. I think they'll pick a head coach. But if they do, again, the season's not over. I just think that there are better options out there. You kind of on the same wavelength?
yeah, for me, I don't know if you can really say if you bring in Scott Arneal as head coach, is he the thing that's going to take the Jets to the next level? And I don't think you can confidently say that.
Yeah, I'm with you. How much noise will we hear about the Jets' attendance heading into next year? The Athletic already has an article trying to stir it up. I read that article. It was very, the start of it, they were stirring it up a little bit. And then at the end, they kind of brought it back and was like, okay, Winnipeg's the most passionate fan base. There's clearly a market for hockey here, things of that nature. So it wasn't entirely like stirring the pot and saying like, oh, attendance is a problem. It ended on a high note saying like hockey will work in Winnipeg. That was the consensus of the article. But what do you think? How much noise are we going to hear about the attendance this offseason?
I think with how this season went with all of that nonsense, I think you're going to hear a lot about it in the first half. But I honestly feel like if they find a way to pack the building for at least a few games early in the season, it goes away.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. Rebel, what did you get your mothers for Mother's Day?
I can't
is it a
say that
surprise?
yet because I haven't seen her yet today.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
I know.
secret.
Yeah, come on, man. My mother and I are going to the Forks for wine flights and then to Moxie's for dinner. So that is the plan.
Yeah, I'm heading over there after work today, so that'll be nice.
There you go. How many first-year prospects do you see on the team by end of next season? Oof, that's a good question.
Yeah,
Lambert, I think, is on the Jets by the end of next season. Ville Heinola, does that count? I'm not sure.
it's tough,
It's
but
tough
I
to
feel
count
like
that.
I feel like you can almost lock in one, but I feel like anything above one for first year is such a wild card
Chibrikov?
because like maybe like
Maybe.
maybe I feel like he might be one of those guys that they keep down one more year just to like, hey, kill it down there, and
Yeah.
then see if it translates to the NHL.
Yep, totally. Doug, do the Jets re-sign Capobianco or just let him walk? He was what, AHL All-Star defenseman?
He was like the
Or
defenseman of the year.
Defenseman of the year. Yes. So I think there will be a a market for him to be a depth guy elsewhere, and I don't think that place is Winnipeg. So I could see him going elsewhere and playing maybe a 6-7 role on another team. The Jets, if they do re-sign him, it would be for that 6-7 role, and maybe you'd see a Logan Stanley go elsewhere, that type of thing.
Well, like, let's be real too. Like he's turning 27 this year, so you're not. This is probably where he's going to top out. Like you're not
Yeah.
probably going to see him be a real impact guy somewhere in the leagues elsewhere. But power to him to try and find some success in the future, whether it's in the Jets organization with the Moose or possibly getting a depth role elsewhere in the NHL.
Yeah, absolutely. C-Mac, who is a player, pitcher to watch in the goal that is someone exciting? Brian, I have one, or I have a few actually, but I'll throw this one to you first.
I feel like I'll give you both player and pitcher. For players, I mean, the obvious choice is Max Murphy. He just hit his 100th career American Association home run last night. He is the heart and soul of the Goldeyes. He was named the best player in the league by the league for the second consecutive year. Bearing down on some all-time Goldeyes records this year too. So you're seeing that, and he's obviously the easy choice. But I think that some real attention needs to be paid to the regular, everyday third baseman, Dason Cruz, who came in last year as a true rookie. He had never played any pro ball before last year, won Rookie of the Year, hit well over 300. His first game this season, he had, I think, 3 hits, 2 RBI, and he hasn't played the second and third games of the season, but for very good reason. And I want to shout out Dason here. He just went and finished up his degree at Quincy University up in Illinois. And he graduated this week. So shout out to him for doing that. And then in terms of pitching, I'm going to definitely say Joey Matulovic. He was second in the league last year in strikeouts. Had a fantastic first start last night. Went 6 innings, struck out, I think, 4, and only allowed, I think, 6 hits, but 1 run. So he is kind of the backbone in terms of the strikeout numbers. You got guys like Landon Barassa who can also step in and get some innings. Couple new faces in there. Zach Reininger, Colton Eastman. They're guys that are definitely gonna play a big role down the stretch here.
Yeah. I was gonna take one of Dason or Max, but you covered everything, and that's fine by me. Brad Marchand out tonight, as per Elliot Freeman. That is interesting. The Danish Dash. What are some realistic Ehlers trades to bring in a right-handed defenseman, add draft picks as needed? I think this question almost deserves its own episode, and maybe we'll do that this week coming up, because looking at potential options, and T. Konopali brought it up here, Braden Schneider from the Rangers, Brandon Carlo from the Bruins, right-handed defenseman. I know Ryan Pulock is another one from the Islanders who I could see the Jets bringing in. There's a lot of right-handed defensemen out there who
I need to
much
actually think
Ehlers,
about it
have
before I answer that.
Yeah, there's a lot out there. That's all I'm going to say. But I haven't thought about specific like trade packages, let's say. But there are a few names. Yeah, Braden Schneider, Brandon Carlo, Ryan Pulock, Rasmus Anderson from the Flames as well. I think there's a lot of. Yeah, I also with this one, C-Mac, I haven't taken a look at the UFA list, but the Jets always, like maybe Colin Miller comes back. That's a guy we didn't talk about in the UFAs. We forgot about Colin Miller.
Oh, yeah.
But anyways, I think in unrestricted free agency, the Jets are looking for depth. They're not going to be bringing in anyone of note, I don't think. And the best way to acquire a right-hand defenseman is through a trade. So we will do an episode on that maybe this week.
Tune into episode either 92 or 93, depending on which one we covered in.
Exactly. Matt, thoughts on Byron Mullins joining the Sea Bears? We need Elliot here. Where's Elliot, man? He'd be perfect for this. I got the shirt on. I'll try my best. He was a first-round pick in 2009, played 5 years in the NBA, 7-footer. And that's about the book on him. The Sea Bears needed bigs. That is one thing they needed. They signed a lot of notable guards this year. Teddy Allen, the MVP, came back. Alex Campbell, former CEBL Finals MVP, signed with the Sea Bears as well. But they needed bigs, and this guy's 7 feet tall, and he's going to start. He's going to be a big. He's going to be big. That's my analysis. No, but apparently he fits a clear need, and I read some of Elliot's work on it and read some other articles relating to Byron Mullins joining the Sea Bears and all of those.
Elliot just dropped his Sea Bears preview. So obviously go check that out. He's been doing, team by team. And I really think that if you're kind of looking for a primer, that's where you're going to find it.
Totally. Thoughts on Ticona always using
it gets my attention.
Yes, absolutely. I like Schneider and Carlo, but maybe not for Ehlers. Schneider's more of a younger guy.
I'd need more.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. The Ehlers thing we will talk about on a episode coming up this week. What's the deal with that new 3v3 hockey league? I don't know. Like, did Steve Dangle?
No one really knows.
Well, this is the thing, because Steve Dangle reported it, but then you didn't see anyone else report it. You didn't see Elliot Friedman, Jeff Merrick, Frank Saravalli. You didn't see anyone else mention the report, mention like even Chris Johnson, who works for SDPN, didn't mention it either. I just don't know what to think about that, because then he said that he tweeted out that there were a ton of red flags and he took the report down altogether. So
we'll see.
I'm just going to shrug my shoulders at that and say, yeah, we'll see. Jacob Stoller, friend of the pod, the Hockey News, was reporting that he was reporting that the league was funded by Saudi Arabia money. So like the Live Golf of hockey. But we'll see. We'll see what happens, because there was a report and now the report just doesn't exist anymore. Could the Jets' new coach be a deciding factor for Ehlers? We're most likely saying goodbye. I think they're most likely saying goodbye, but the coach coming in and maybe you talked about this, maybe having a discussion around his ice time could maybe sway him to stay. And maybe I don't see it. What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say it's not possible. And obviously there is a level of dialogue that could be had there, but no, it just feels like time has run out on the relationship, unfortunately.
I think so too. But yeah, I was not happy with the lack of use for Miller. Yeah, we talked about that a lot down the stretch. Me neither. Yeah. Doug, we're not pulling the age discrimination thing. He's in the middle of his
There's
prime.
a lot of documented research on the aging curve, and essentially if you're not in the NHL, by the point of
Yeah.
like 26 as defenseman, it's not looking ideal for you. Obviously, there's exceptions to the rule. There always is, but more often than not, the older you get and you haven't made that impact in the NHL, the less likely it is. So I'm not going to write him off entirely. It's just not at that point.
Yeah, it's and I'm gonna go back to 20 minutes ago when I said I think he could be a sixth defenseman on another team this year, and that's why
Yeah.
I don't think the Jets are bringing him back because he is 27. He is in his prime, and he's just coming off a year where he had a great year in the AHL. So we will see. CMAC Ehlers is Utah bound. They're looking to make a splash this year, and we'll try to get him.
Wouldn't
I've said
shock me.
this since, yeah, neither would I be shocked by that. I said this when, sorry, I struggled with that big time. I said this before. I said this a few weeks ago, or maybe it was a few months ago when we had this preliminary talk of Ehlers, and I said he was a Seattle Kraken, a team that's heavily invested in analytics, needs a scoring winger to drive play on their top line. I think the Kraken would make a move for him. Now, I haven't looked at the Kraken. Like, I know they have Adam Larson as a right defenseman. That I don't want to make that deal 1-for-1, but maybe we'll see. I could see him being a member of the Seattle Kraken. Matt, see you at TCB tomorrow. Yes, I will be there. Super pumped to see everyone and drop in the chat if you're going and come by and say hi. That'll be a blast. Giordano is an exception. Yeah. Anyways, Brian, that's going to do it. 13th edition of LFP Live, Mother's Day edition. Thank you everyone for joining us. Any words on the way out, Brian?
As always, thanks everyone for watching. Happy Mother's Day. And, it's going to be a little bit probably lighter on content this week in terms of our episodes. And like, obviously we'll be doing a lot of talk about, the Ehlers thing. We're going to be doing a lot on, other series, and maybe something else pops up with the coaching search that we have a bit more to talk about on that. But sort of to expect this week to be maybe some shorter episodes, but we're still going to be, hammering out the content as much as we can. And then, as Connor said, doubtful for next Sunday, but we will keep all of you updated, to see if it's, ruled out, after, if it doesn't practice this week. We'll see. But no, it's, May long. It's a little bit iffy just with I'm out of town, so I'm out regardless. I know, Connor, you're coming and going, and we're not certain. Like Elliot said, he might be able to, but it's just kind of all up in the air. So, but later in the week we'll give you a heads up. We might know by Thursday for the Thursday episode. So stay tuned. But as I said, thank you everyone for watching. Connor, what do you have to say?
Yes. I know, CMAC. I share the disappointment. It might be for shame. Yeah, it might. We'll see. I'll definitely know personally by Wednesday, Thursday. So I'll if you tune into episode, what'll that be? 93. We will have a decision then. Stay glued to our socials. And go check out the socials at Level Flight WPG. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. Thanks for joining us. Hit the like button on the way out. I'll see some of you tomorrow night at TCB. But as for us, we will talk to you Tuesday. Maybe that'll be the Ehlers episode. Maybe it'll be Thursday. But regardless, thank you so much for joining us. This was an absolute blast. We will see you all Tuesday or Thursday, and maybe next weekend. Regardless, we'll see. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the next couple of days, everyone. Enjoy. Hopefully the smoke passes through the city here, and enjoy the nice weather. See you, and happy Mother's Day.